Our panel discussion is going to be moderated by Alex Turner, who is an environmental program manager in our cannabis office. And our panel today is rich in generational diversity of African American environmental scientists. We're seeking really to dismantle some of the myths around the lack of diversity in STEM by just highlighting a few folks who are doing a lot of research and really neat work kind of in this space. So I very much appreciate all of our panelists for spending the time today, and Alex, you for moderating. And before we get started, Chuck, I'd like to turn it over to you to share a few opening remarks and then to introduce our panelists.
100%. Thank you, Nicole and Janae and everyone for organizing this. In particular, our three panelists who didn't have to agree to give us an hour of their discretionary time. But we're so appreciative for that. It's true, I'm Chuck Bonham. I'm still the director of the California Department of Fish and Wildlife, mostly the greatest job in the world. For our panelists and non-department folks who are joining us, and there's a broader open invitation across the resources agency. Our department's about 3,000 employees, and we view our mission as saving nature in California for everyone. And I just would like to say to start out that each of our histories individually has to be part of our collective history. And as Morgan Freeman said, Black history is American history. The thing I've learned the most is to get out of the way and turn over these speaker series to the folks who are really powerful and really dynamic. And in a minute, I want to give it to Alex Turner, who's one of our own employees here at the department we're super proud of. But here's the quick bio for each of the three individuals we're going to spend an hour with. Bryce Barbie. Bryce, you want to raise your hand? Big shout out for Bryce. Bryce is from Long Beach, California. He's currently a PhD candidate at University of California, Santa Barbara. He has an interest in marine ecosystems, and that started several years ago, as I understand it. He's actually kind of in and around his labs and his co-share space today. That's what we see in the background. In middle school, Bryce had the opportunity to take fishing trips with his school, and he volunteered with the Aquarium of the Pacific. He then attended University of California, Los Angeles, pursuing his interest in the natural world through a degree in ecology, behavior, and evolution. And his current PhD research, still within the UC system, focuses on the behavioral ecology of marine cleaning mutualisms in tropical ecosystems, which is about the extent of my, like, those are big words in one sentence, Bryce. So I'm super impressed. I look forward to hearing you on the panel. Our second panelist wins the award for the coolest backdrop today with all those fish tanks. And that's Khalil Russell from Hampton, Virginia, who is also in a PhD program. He's a third-year PhD student studying population biology. His research is focused on the relationship between morphology, which is the shapes of organisms and their body parts, and ecology, which is the way those organisms use our resources in the environment, in freshwater fish, which I think is probably the connection to the things in the background. But Khalil also is inspired to be influential across a whole bunch of platforms: academic, political, social justice spaces. He teaches, he does nonprofit work and local political work. In his spare time, he keeps fish and houseplants, makes various espresso drinks. And you might bump into him posting on YouTube, I'm told. This YouTube thing, I don't know exactly what it is, but I hear it's pretty cool. And then our last panelist is Dr. James Reed Jr. He's currently a part-time professor of environmental sciences at CSU Sacramento. I understand he's had 2 classes already today. He's lectured, and he's got one coming up towards the end of the day. He's a retired electric transmission systems engineer with the California Energy Commission. He's involved in community activism since 1974. Over the last 5 decades, Dr. Reed has received awards in many different capacities and in leadership perspectives, from the Congressional Black Caucus Energy Brain Trust, the Northern California NAACP, the United Negro College Fund for Sacramento Valley, Habitat for Humanity, and the California Department of Education, where he was a consultant for the Gender Equity Division. I'll also say, as a probably a little known historical fact, Dr. Reed spoke 25 years ago to the then Department of Fish and Game at the beginning of Black History Month in whatever the math is of 25 years ago. So Dr. Reed, thanks for coming back for a second conversation. And without much ado, Alex, let me turn it over to you. Alex is an environmental program manager, as Nicole mentioned, for us. She's in our Office of Cannabis program. She's had a variety of regulatory roles across the state and 10 years of experience as an environmental scientist. She has a Master's of Science degree in forensic science and a Bachelor of Science degree in forensic biology. I'm told in your free time, you like to go to the beach with friends and family and play sports. So we're in great hands, Alex. I appreciate all you're doing for the department. I look forward to the panel, and we appreciate y'all giving us your time.
Thanks so much, Chuck. And thank you everyone for joining us today for this discussion in celebration of Black History Month. Today, we come together to recognize and appreciate the roots and resilience of the Black and African American communities, the path to progress and pursuit of prosperity. In our shared journey, we emphasize the importance of building bridges that connect our past with the present to foster a sense of unity and understanding. Just like the natural resources which we care for, every individual is inherently valuable, and our collective power lies in embracing this truth. By embracing diverse voices and experiences, we can create a brighter future where all communities thrive. Today, we'll begin our programming by hearing from our two young professional panelists who will share their current research in marine biology. First, we'll begin with a short presentation by Bryce Barbie, followed by a presentation by Khalil Russell. And with that, I will turn it over to Bryce.
All right. Thank you so much, for the intro. All right. Yeah. And thank you everybody for being here and just checking out these presentations too and letting me speak to you guys for Black History Month and share just some of my research. So I guess for this, I'll first start with just saying a little bit about who I am and of how I got here right now. Like you said, I'm in my my PhD. I'm in my second year. And so then I'll tell you a little bit about my research for it. And so sorry if I go a little bit over time, but I'm gonna try to rush through it and just show you guys a little bit. So yeah, to start off, my name is Bryce Barbie. I'm in the second year of my PhD. I'm in the Ecology, Evolution, and Marine Bio department at UCSB, and I study behavioral ecology and like marine bio type of research, mainly like with a focus on just animal behavior in the Caves lab with my advisor, Eleanor Caves. All right, next slide, please. Yeah, so to start off with my research journey, I feel like I always just have to start with my family. And so just to show like my background of where I came from and just what they do. So on the left, we have my mom. She's like the race team coordinator at Honda for Honda Motorsports. And then my dad on the right, he's a 5th grade teacher in the LA school district. And then my sister right next to me, and she's a writer for she writes like cartoons and stuff for different, she hops around with different like animation studios and stuff like that. And so I like starting with that because it really shows like that nobody else in my family also just did marine science type of work. They all thrived in their own areas. But it really started my journey in like marine science and just, science in general, mainly because my family, they just let me go and always like super supportive of just whatever my interests were, just, hey, go and do it. Like same thing with my sister. She loved to write, she loved to draw. So it was just, hey, follow whatever you want to do. And mine was catching lizards in the backyard and going on fishing trips. So it was like, go for that, do that. And so, I feel like I just have to start there. Right, next slide. And then, so after high school, I grew up in Long Beach and then I went to UCLA for undergrad. And so these were two of my first actual like research experiences. So on the right, I was in the Pinter Woolman lab there, which is the animal behavior lab in which I studied like the behavior of ants. And then on the left, I did another experience that was completely different. It was a marine biology RU, so like research experience for undergrads, and it was called the Diversity Project. And so this was like really one of the first like intros to just my science like path in general. And Diversity Project, it's a program put on by Dr. Paul Barber at UCLA, and he really just like makes a program where it just tries to increase just diversity in marine sciences because it's often just not, marine science is just not a super diverse field. And so with that, he funded us for like a lot of the gear that we used and taught us how to like do our actual scientific diving training, and then flew us out to Moorea, French Polynesia to actually carry out like a field experience. So I'm really grateful for that program and just in general, yeah, the other lab that I was also into, the Pinter Woman lab, for just getting me really started with an actual like just science type of process. Next slide, please. And then so now I'm at UC Santa Barbara and I'm in the Caves lab. And so like Chuck said in the intro before, I studied marine cleaning mutualisms. And so that you can see it a little bit down in the left picture. And that's where cleaner, like I studied cleaner shrimp that clean client fish. And so it's fish that come up to their reefs. I mean, come up to like their cleaning stations on reefs and just get like ectoparasites and like dead skin just picked off of them. And it's like a mutualism where they both benefit during the process. And so the specific shrimp I study is Encylomedes petersoni. And so this is a picture that I took of one. It has a little like orange tag on the back of it that I put on there so I could tell like individuals from each other in the groups. Next slide, please. And so, yeah, here's a video of an actual cleaning interaction just so you can see what it looks like. And so you see, yeah, the Encylomedes petersoni starts in the white circle. And then, yeah, it goes up and cleans this client fish that showed up at its station. So it does this by, yeah, hopping in the mouth and cleaning off the ectoparasites in the dead skin. Basically, on reefs, there's a bunch of those different like cleaning stations. And so at like each cleaning station is basically an anemone where it'll be groups of those cleaner shrimp, the petersoni cleaners, that they're just waiting right there for different species of fish to come in and just receive like this cleaning service. And so with that, we'll see it'll be like certain stations just have like really high client species richness compared to other stations, meaning that like a bunch more clients will come into certain areas versus others. And then often they interact with predatory clients too, which are basically just fish that are like have crustaceans of about the same size, like in their diet, like crustaceans as the same size as the cleaner shrimp. And so there's really like an inherent just risk involved with that. And I feel like that's kind of like early on where my interest lied with it, as far as just being interested in how you saw in that video that the shrimp just went in the client's mouth. And it's like, that's also a predatory fish that was in that video. That's a predatory stonefish. And to where it's kind of just like, how do you balance that mutualism and like different signals that you do with that? So how I was saying, basically, these cleaners just clean in groups at the different stations. And so where I started getting really interested in like the variation that you see within the different individuals at the station. And so I circled at first this, just like this first cleaner right here that you saw. But actually, if you look closer, you see that there's a bunch of other cleaners also at the station just doing different things. So already there's one that's on the client fish that's already just there, and it's already like begun cleaning. And then there's another cleaner right here in the purple circle that just popped up, and it seems to like notice that the client shows up, but then turns around and doesn't proceed to actually give the client a cleaning service. And then there's these two that are right here too, that also, they just seem like they just completely don't care that the client, which is like a potential meal for them, just showed up, and they just don't give a cleaning service as well. And so now, yeah, just to play the video a little bit again, just so you can see like what these different individuals are doing. And so this kind of doesn't make sense for us in like a way, because it would seem that it'd be beneficial for every cleaner to go and try to clean the client because you received this meal. So I started looking at like what variation there might, like how you can quantify this variation basically between different cleaners and what this might mean. And so to do that, I first had to start and think about what aspects of an individual's behavior might affect how it interacts with the clients. And so the three different things that I chose, which are pretty like popular in just like behavioral syndrome and just like animal behavior type research, like these three different behavioral metrics are like boldness, activity level, and then exploration. And so with that boldness, how I said these clients, the cleaners clean predatory clients sometimes. So like there's just an inherent risk involved with cleaning these predators. And then activity level, just to see like their overall energetic demands and just activity and how that might affect like their interactions with clients. And then exploration, and in this sense, I use exploration as seeing how many different like novel species of clients that they're willing to interact that show up to a station. And so I'm not going to show you how I tested each one just for time, but this is a quick video showing you how I tested the boldness for them. And so basically boldness, I'm just looking at like their response to risk. And so for this, I looked at their latency to return to where risk once was. And so I give them like a little food block in a tank, and then they come up to the food block, and then I drop a weight to just like simulate like just a startling event for them. And then I time just like the latency for them to return to where the risk was. And then I do this for each individual just 3 different times. That way I can then measure like the repeatability of it to see how consistent their behaviors are from other individuals. And so then with that, I did like different tests like that for boldness, for activity and exploratory behaviors. And I did that in a lab setting. And I wanted to see how this like variation in behavior related to what we see actually in the field, just on reefs and cleaning stations. And so I ended up finding that individual cleaners in the lab did vary with their boldness, their activity, and like their exploratory behaviors. And so also I said these cleaners clean at stations on the reef. And so there'll be a bunch of stations just like next to each other on a reef, but we'll see variation like between these stations as well, and like the service quality that they give to their clients. And so with this, like a client acceptance rate, so sometimes the client will come up and want to be cleaned, but then the cleaner won't actually hop on and give the client the service. And so that's a bad service quality to the client. And also like, yeah, also like the mean cleaning duration. And that so if they give them like a long cleaning, then that's just a better service too. And then we also see variation in the fish, like in the preferences of the fish that show up to the different stations. And so it could be 2 stations that are right next to each other, but then one station receives like a really high visit rate of clients, and then the other, like a station could receive just like high client species richness. So like 10 different species of fish could show up at this station versus just one species at this station. So basically, what I'm trying to show is that there's variation at just a bunch of different scales that we see having to do with these cleaning interactions. And I'm trying to now look at just the connections between them to see if we can use the behaviors of the individuals to explain some of this variation that we see in the different cleaning stations. All right, thank you. Yeah, thank you everybody for staying here throughout the technical difficulties too. And yeah, that's it for me.
Bryce, thank you so much for that amazing presentation. Apologies for the technical difficulties, but we are in this virtual space and it's bound to happen, I know, but I appreciate you working through that. We would love to know more about your research and academic journey and inspiration following Khalil's presentation. So with that, Khalil, I'm going to hand it over to you.
To give a preface, this is a science communication video I made for a course in my second year. It kind of talks about the methods of my the first chapter of my dissertation. And so this is a project that focuses on species introductions, invasive species, and kind of figuring out who's going to be the successful invader, who's going to be an unsuccessful invader. So yeah, if there's time after the video, I'll explain some of the results that I've gotten since making that video, but without further ado.
What can the body shapes of fish tell us about invasive species? To answer that question, let me first show you just how diverse fish body shapes are. Let's start with how diverse fish body shapes are. Let's start with cichlids, my favorite group of fish and a generally good place to start when it comes to understanding the body shape of fish. Cichlids in general look like fish, but for every single fish I could show you, I could probably show you another fish that looks absolutely nothing like it. An interesting problem we then run into is how to quantify that diversity, how to capture it and compare it in meaningful statistical ways, right? It may seem like comparing apples to oranges, but I promise you there's a method to the madness. And that method is called geometric morphometry. Let's think of the stars, points in a backdrop of black and blue. You can take a set of these points and form a shape. We call this a constellation, and in this case, it's the Taurus constellation, the shape of a bull. From this vague set of points, we can form the shape of a living animal. Geometric morphometry is a method that follows the same principles but backwards. You start with the shape of an animal, in this case, a fish. Place points, or landmarks, in strategic, consistent locations around the body of this fish to capture the essence of its body shape, like making a constellation from the shape of an animal. This method allows us to systematically compare the body shapes of animals to say officially that one animal is more or less similar to another in body shape, and this method is at the heart of what I do. But where do we go from here? Well, when I fell in love with fish at the ripe old age of 10, I fell in love for life. However, for a lot of people, fish are just a fling, a fleeting affection, and at the end of their entertainment value, many fish end up released into the wild, where they become introduced species. There, they compete with native species for resources like habitat and food, and that's where body shape comes into play. What do I mean? Basically, wings help birds fly, and long legs help cheetahs run really fast. The shape of an animal's body affects what it can and cannot do, and in theory, the more similar two fish are in body shape, the more similar they are in what they do, and the more likely they are to compete with one another. Understanding this competition allows us to better predict which introduced species might have less competition or fewer competitors. These species might have an easier time surviving and multiplying, and therefore may demand extra attention to keep their numbers under control. Now, I have a lot of work left to do to prove that this method truly allows us to predict those two things, but if it does, we'll have a relatively cheap and easy way to better understand and protect our native species, many of whom support important commercial and sport fisheries, as well as the larger ecosystems which bring so many people so much joy and peace. So, in conclusion, I hope you've taken from this film a new appreciation for the diversity of fish body shapes, how we study them as scientists, and what this study can teach us about the natural world. Furthermore, as each of you are potential fish keepers, I hope you put me out of a job by never releasing your fish in the wild, instead appreciating them as I do from an armchair in your living room. Thanks for watching, tank on, and take care, guys.
If I have just like a couple of more minutes, I'll give an update to that project. So I had so much fun making the video. I have to say most of those fish are fish that I owned, and all of those videos were videos that I took over the course of the year. But yeah, so I say toward the end of the video, we have yet to prove whether or not this method works. Here we are a year later, and in fact, the method did do what I wanted it to do, which I'm really excited about. I validated the method against an existing measure of invasion potential and found that when my method said this fish is going to be a problem, this other method said this fish is going to be a problem. And they used a lot more information and expert opinions to make their metric. So I've made a much cheaper, much faster, much easier way to get at that same kind of information to hopefully help people predict further in the future, right, which introduced species are going to be those problematic invaders.
Wow, Khalil, thank you so much for that amazing presentation as well. And I appreciate you being here. We all do. And I think at this time, I'd like to bring Dr. Reed into the conversation, and let's begin our panel discussion. So Dr. Reed, I have a question for you. You have extensive and an impressive resume. Can you briefly share what or who first inspired your dedication to environmental studies? And in your opinion, what are you most proud of in this space?
My children inspired me to get deeper into the environment. I have a son who had asthma, and in the Central Valley during the fire seasons, I couldn't let him go play golf. By the way, he is a PGA professional. So I started him when he was 3.5 and started my daughter when she was 5. So being out in the outdoors gave me the impetus to do something about it.
Right.
I got my first shot at the California Department of Fish and Game back in 1982 when I first brought well, when I brought the first wind farm online in Northern California. I had to work with Fish and Game back then to make sure that the site down at the Pacheco Pass did not have any endangered species residing on it. They called me the Black Don Quixote, but I got the first wind farm online. And prior to age 30, had $10.7 million in sales. But as I moved on in my career, I went ahead and got a master's degree in public policy and administration with an emphasis on environmental policy. Then CSU messed around and gave me $30,000 under their doctoral incentive program, which paid for half of my doctorate. And as I was studying, I was looking at the different instances of environmental injustice.
Right.
Not environmental justice, but injustice.
And how important is the history of that environmental injustices?
Oh, well, I'm going to get into that.
Let's get into it.
My dissertation advisor suggested write something that they don't have a clue about. And so I wrote Environmental Obstacles to Construction of Educational Facilities in California, and did case studies of UC Merced, the Belmont Learning Center that was built on a former oil field that Dogger, Department of Oil, Gas, and Geothermal Resources, told them not to build on.
Right.
The former Fort Ord that I had a lot of dealing with. People call me, oh, you've been dealing with CEQA since 1981. Yeah, but the most valuable lesson I got was from a department and then Fish and Game employee when I became a project manager for licensing power plants. And he said, Reed, I hadn't gotten my doctorate yet. If they haven't done a spring survey, kick their application out. Whoa, I said, huh? And for those of you who don't know what a spring survey is, we look for listed species under the Federal Endangered Species Act or the California Endangered Species Act. And that saved me a whole lot of time because I could focus on the other things while they're having to wait to do the spring survey. I also found out that you don't always have to do a spring survey, that oftentimes you have to do a fall survey. We have 2.2 billion birds, migratory birds, come through this Central Valley every fall. And then there's 2.6 billion birds going back north. So we need to do a fall survey and a spring survey. Now, one of the things that impassioned me with my students was telling them about environmental disasters here in California, because virtually all my students are from California. We talk about the Iron Mountain Mine up north of Redding where Janae Looney is. It has the most acidic acid mine drainage in the world. It killed over 22 million salmon.
Wow.
Okay, but you know, I appreciate their being so energetic in their dissertations. My dissertation committee told me to do a 28-page glossary because they didn't have a clue. Okay, but let me not hog all the space.
Yes. Okay, well, I appreciate that response. And I think with that, we're going to move on to another question I have for Khalil. Khalil, why did you choose the area of research that you engage in? And has there been anything surprising in your findings?
So the area of research I chose, really, really fun story. When I was a kid, I wanted a dog, which I now have, but my 5th grade science teacher assigned us a recurring science project, and they said that observations of pets counted. And so I'm like, okay, can I have a dog? My mom's afraid of dogs. I couldn't have a dog. I got fish. So that's part 1. Part 2, I have these fish and I'm taking care of them, and I start breeding them by accident, like guppies, you know? And then I take them to the pet store. The pet store owner gives me a pair of cichlids. says, take these home, breed them, bring back the babies, we'll call it even. I did that and I was hooked. This entire tank is just cichlids. This tank is mostly cichlids. So I'm obsessed with cichlids, and cichlids happen to be a really important model system in evolution. So I study cichlids in evolution, but then they're also really widespread invasive species. And so that's how I got into the project I presented today, which was about invasive species in Florida.
Wow, it's really interesting. Thank you so much for that.
Yeah.
Bryce, in your presentation, you mentioned barriers in your environmental studies journey. I imagine those barriers could become frustrating or even discouraging. Can you tell us what or who inspired you to continue down this path, and what advice you would provide to someone looking to pursue environmental studies now?
Yeah. With that, I guess like who inspired me? Kind of, I guess, yeah, to start just what I started with during my presentation, and it was my family of pretty much just always being like, even if they didn't know exactly what I was doing, like, feel like I would tell, yeah, my family of like, oh, I'm studying animal behavior. And it's like, okay, what is that? Like, you're just like watching an animal, and it's like not knowing exactly what it is, but just being like, hey, like kind of trusting me just with the process of like, hey, go ahead and do what you want to do. And with that, also just like, once I really started getting into like the research part of it, the advisors, I feel like my advisors were always like super helpful and like encouraging. And so like I talked about with the first lab that I joined, which was the Pinter-Wollman lab at UCLA with Noah Pinter-Wollman, and just really like giving me the guidance of like how to start working on my own research projects there. And then like the diversity project, which that was like my first field experience of the first time like leaving the country to do research and stuff. And so and like my first time being on scuba and just doing like actual like marine type of work where I'm collecting my own data like that. And so I feel like that program, yeah, really helped me out. And that was a program that like they've been doing that for, I want to say I don't want to get the years wrong, but it's over 10 years for sure that they've been running that. And just like, yeah, just promoting diversity just in marine science too, and just like helping with the actual like payment part of it, of like getting gear, which I feel like, yeah, is a really huge like point for like, yeah, for a lot of the students, just because it's like you can give us the actual training of how to be a diver, and then just like let us like rent the gear, and then you take it away, and it's like, oh well, like the gear is expensive and stuff like that is expensive. So actually like giving us gear, and just like now you can actually carry on the skill and use it in your own research. So I feel like things like that, and just like different programs that are different like events and stuff like that program that I did would put on, where it's like doing things like this, like opening it to panels and just letting me hear other people talk about research and stuff like that. And just like a research path, and start like really building an idea of what I wanted to do with this, and like really feeling like I belonged, as far as like, yeah, knowing that I can do this and just keep on going with the research.
Yeah, that's really amazing to hear, because my experience is slightly different. You know, I grew up in California, went to Sac State, but I knew nothing. I mean, science was like either you're a doctor or, you know, you're a biologist. You got to work in a private lab sector. But I was never in my career told that you could be a state scientist. I didn't even know what that was until I got, you know, a little scientific aid job, or those type of things presented themselves to me. So it's really encouraging to hear that there are programs out there that really are fostering this diversity for us in school. So Khalil, do you have any experience with that in your college career? Like anybody that's promoting diversity and equity within the school-based system for you? Programs? Or do you do
So
outreach maybe?
yes and yes. One of the reasons I chose this program was because Alexis Roberts was an older student. She's since graduated as a doctor, Alexis Roberts. She was really dedicated to outreach. And I felt like coming here would kind of give me someone to look up to kind of model my own outreach path after. But when I got here, I realized that my path would be different. And so like outreach that I do now, like since coming into grad school, I've done, you know, science activities with middle schoolers on a recurring basis. That was STEM Squad. I do this week-long summer program where we teach high schoolers how to navigate the college admissions process. That's called the Crabber Cap program. But yeah, my outreach is about empowering people, like
Yeah.
trying to give people knowledge, information so that they can go, like if they want to be scientists, they go be scientists. But if they just take the critical thinking skills and the practices from science and want to apply that to something else, right? Law, acting, whatever, they should do that.
Right, right. That is so amazing to hear. Thank you for sharing that. And Dr. Reed, in hearing all of our experiences, from your perspective, how does ensuring representation in STEM fields impact the work that we do to protect and conserve the state's fish and wildlife resources? Do you have a contribution you'd like to speak directly to?
Yes, I was a consultant to the State Department of Education's Gender Equity Division, which is part of vocational education. And we put together a STEM guide and career guides for young women. And we went up and down the state teaching young women about science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And then, because I had a daughter and a niece I was raising, I wanted to make sure that they could do anything they want to.
Right.
Because just because she's a girl doesn't mean she can't be a marine biologist. Doesn't mean that she can't be an electrical engineer, a civil engineer, or a nuclear engineer. So again, my emphasis was making sure my daughters and niece had the opportunity that I had. And then
Yeah.
when I got to Sac State 21 years ago, for 20 of those years, I was the only African-American professor of environmental science in the entire 23 campus CSU system. That's
Wow.
why I've been here. I put a legacy together. I got 11 African-American young males and females, it's actually more females than males, in graduate programs with full rides. So somebody can take over for me. I'm tired.
Yes, that's
I've been
important.
retired 7 years this month after 33 years in PERS.
Right.
I've been doing this 21 part-time because, you know, brother got to have more than one job. 'Cause I'm from Chicago. I like paper in my pocket. But
Yes, I think we all like that, but that's amazing. I mean, STEM for women, especially young girls, the fact that, you know, you're promoting that for your family and for all of
yeah,
us
and it
is,
carried over.
yeah,
And it carried over. But one of the other things, I was Northern California chairman of the United Negro College Fund, and I raised $3.2 million for historically Black colleges and universities. Not
nice.
everybody can afford tuition, but if I'm getting the money for them to be able to teach our young women, that's the biggest hurdle that people have to cross. Now,
Right.
my daughter, she had 80 some odd $1,000 in merit-based scholarships. My son had 149,000 in merit-based and golf scholarships.
Hmm.
But you have to teach them that we're a community, as Khalil said,
Right.
and that this community needs people to stand up for them, especially like in St. John's Parish in Louisiana on Chemical Alley.
Right. Right. Yes. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Reed.
Okay.
Khalil, you've accomplished a great deal in your career so far. What, if anything, do you think may have made your experience easier? And then what improvements would you like in exposing, encouraging, and supporting recruitment of any person of color? I think you spoke briefly to that, but maybe elaborate a little bit.
Yeah. Those are two really good questions. Could you re-articulate just the first one? I'm going to go one at a time.
Sure, sure. So what, if anything, do you think may have made your experience easier?
Yes. So I struggled with my mental health toward the beginning of my graduate career. I think that grad school is very hard. You know, when you go from middle school to high school, they say, oh, it's going to be hard. Go from high school to college, oh, it's going to be hard. But those kinds of increases in difficulty are increases in just the effort it takes. But
Right.
at least for me, and I've talked to a lot of people, they share this experience. Grad school is a different kind of hard. And I wish that we'd have been better at articulating that to prospective students. I think if you know someone who's in that space, then it's kind of obvious. But if you are coming from outside of that space, then yeah, I think that there's this lack of transparency that I think would have helped me. Another thing is having administrative channels and processes in place for students who are struggling with mental health challenges or like any kind of challenges, right? If we want to have a diverse graduate student body, we need to have mechanisms so that each individual experience can be accommodated so that they can each find their success, right? If we only want to produce one kind of student, then we only need one kind of process. If we want
Right.
to produce a diverse set of students, we need to have an administration that keeps up with that. And then your second question?
What improvements would you like in exposing, encouraging, and supporting recruitment of any person of color? So I think you spoke to that just now, in terms of increasing access, maybe increasing how we recruit, increasing it sounds like mental health was, important and is important currently in our, state of everyday life. But yeah, I think all of that is important, especially like you said, when you get to grad school. I can also speak, when you get into the career field, to have all of that kind of all of those things worked through, right? To have a diversity of individuals who are available for helping in our process, right? Especially the state process here in California. It's crazy how to even get an interview, and then you get to an interview and sometimes you don't even have that much of a diverse panel. So do you have an opportunity to get that job? I know people are, stressed a little bit about those type of things, but yeah, anything that you think improvement wise or anything that you would encourage people of color to work through to get to grad school or any type of career that they want, I guess.
Things that I would encourage individuals to work through in order to get into grad school or through grad school?
Probably both. I think there's probably a variation, right? You need to get in, but also through.
Yeah, I feel like the challenge of getting in is just a whole different animal than getting through. Getting in is about, telling your story effectively. Like,
Right.
I think the spread of people who could get into grad school is bigger than the spread of people who who get in, right? Who write the best application that they can with the story elements that they have. So getting into grad school is about not being afraid to ask people like, hey, my name is X. I'm going to cold email you, say, hey, I'm interested in what you do. Can I talk to you? But then to get through grad school, honestly, the two things that I did, I think, are one, get a dog. I got a dog and it changed my life. The worst days in grad school just aren't that bad once you have a dog. And the second thing is just don't quit. Like,
Yes.
you're going to fail. You just have to keep getting back up. Because if you just outlast the failure, then you'll come out on the other side with a PhD. Because yeah, I don't know. I really wanted to quit for a while, but now I've made it past that hump, I think. And I'm so lucky to be able to do this now, but I could not see that in my first or second year. And I think that's just hard to get past that hump.
That's amazing. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Bryce, we've discussed where your relationship with nature began and how it's influenced your path forward, but can you tell us what's on the horizon for you?
Yeah, so for me right now, the plan, I'm in my second year of the PhD. So the first plan is just finish that and keep on going and finishing the next years of it. Working right now on my first chapter. And so far the data collection has been going well with that, with collecting the first chapter of my dissertation for the program. And then so just keep on going, chipping away at stuff with that. And basically, like Leo said, just keeping on going through it and just chipping away and just keeping doing that. And then after I'm done with that, my plan right now is I do like the route of sticking with research and doing like sticking in academia. And so I'm thinking about like doing like that and basically just having it where I'm try to become like a professor at a university where I'm running my own research lab. And so yeah, but that's what I'm thinking right now. But still I feel like I'm learning so much just about like other paths too, to where it's like I definitely don't want to just like set myself on one track for it and not like explore all the other different options too. So yeah,
Right.
that's kind of what I'm thinking right now. But just keep on doing my research, keep on getting these findings and collecting some data, and yeah, trying to just have fun with it like while I'm going.
Yeah, it's important to have fun for sure. And to keep going. You guys are doing amazing, and the work that you guys are both doing is incredible, right? Dr. Reed, what's on the horizon for you? You're retired, you're trying to get your legacy in place. What's going on? Uh-oh, you're on mute. You're on. There you go.
33 years ago, we started the Northern California African American Young Male Conference.
Okay.
I was one of the 5 founders, and that's to try to get young African American males to where Bryce and Khalil are. We need to begin focusing on getting individuals, all STEM individuals, into the environmental scientists roles, because our waters are polluted. They're getting better, but they're still polluted. We have pesticides, fungicides, rodenticides, it's enough to commit suicides, that are poisoning our food stocks, that are poisoning our farm workers. We need to get the word out that environmental justice negates environmental injustice. In Los Angeles County, they still have oil wells near schools. The methane is polluting the communities. In the city of Southgate, the Tweedy Elementary fiasco, well, I should say disaster, when chromium permeated the school building that was next door to the factory, and over 26 women had spontaneous abortions, the school teachers, and 180 students wound up in the hospital. We need to bring the city of Vernon into the real world, because the Exide battery factory contaminated over 10,000 homes in Southeast Los Angeles County. That's environmental injustice, because who lives in Southeast Los Angeles County? People of color. If
Right.
10,000 homes have lead contamination, we have some issues.
Absolutely. And I appreciate you circling back on that, because it is, very important that we highlight those, the history of the environmental injustices and where it's impacting our vulnerable communities. But I think it's about time for us to wrap up, you guys. I really appreciate you guys spending some time with me today, and for Janae, Nicole, and Chuck putting this together for us. But I think our time is up. You guys, it has been a great pleasure to moderate this. So thank you so much.
Very welcome.
Thank you guys for having us, and thank you for your time, and happy Black History Month.
Happy Black
Thank
History
you.
Month.
Thank you for taking the time.
The shortest
just-
month of the year.
That's
Black
not right.
history is 365 days.
And with that, I will say goodbye and farewell. Thank you all.